Awesome. Thanks for joining us. I know I saw Annika for sure raise her hand. Okay, so if you all could introduce yourselves in the chat and where you are zooming from, that'll help us feel a little connected to each other over this screen. And just a reminder, if you weren't here when we started, we are recording this session for all alumni to tune in and learn later. Our advisor session is part of our learning component of the Young Leaders Program. And the leadership team that's here with you tonight is here to help you become exceptional leaders of people, profits, and purpose. So we're excited to bring back one advisor from 2023 and 3 new advisors for 2024, joining us from 3 different states. All of our advisors are exceptional leaders, distinguished by their attitude, vision, and integrity, the ability to compel others to be their best selves, and lead their best lives while achieving shared and individual goals. So I'm going to quickly just go over who our advisors are. So returning, we have Allison Rabin from Illinois. She is a Greenhouse New Scholar Selection volunteer. She's been a mentor. She's a management executive with 26 plus years of experience. New to this year, we have the one and only Pete Burridge. You may know him from Colorado. He is our Greenhouse founder, board member, New Scholar Selection lead, and soon to be this year also Young Leaders Program coach. We also have Gregg Vanourek from Colorado. He's an author and social entrepreneur. We first met Gregg when he was a Greenhouse Ignite speaker, where he led a personal development workshop. And lastly, we have David Zimmerman from North Carolina. He's a founder and C-suite executive with 40 plus years of experience in wealth management. He's also one of our new coaches and New Scholar Selection volunteers. Okay, so quickly, just to go over the agenda, we did change things up a little bit for those who have been with us before. We are doing a longer panel discussions and shorter breakout groups for these individual team advisor sessions. And then in December, when we do our all advisor session, we will have a shorter panel and longer breakout groups where you'll have workshops with your selected advisor. Okay, so let me see, where are we? Oh yeah, then we'll move into advisor introductions and a panel discussion, very quick alumni introductions. Remember to keep your camera on when we get to that point. Michelle will take a group photo of everybody. Then we'll move into the breakout groups. This is where you'll have a deeper dive into the topics that you'll hear from our advisors. You'll have the opportunity to ask direct follow-up questions to what you hear, questions about their experience, their background, so on and so forth. So as you hear them talk, just make note of any follow-up questions you want to ask of them during the breakout groups. Michelle will explain that as we get closer. All right. So we are going to get into it with our advisor introductions. So Jesse, you can stop sharing. So we are going to go to Allison first, followed by David, Gregg, and then Pete. So everyone's going to answer this question when you introduce yourself. What is a leadership lesson you've learned? And what is a fun fact about you that you want to share with the group? So Allison, starting with you.
Okay. Leadership lesson learned. I would have to say leading as authentic as I can be and with empathy. And I say that when I first started out, I did the exact opposite. And I'm a little ashamed, but we all learn from our failures, I guess. I started working at a large publicly traded company, and the true drivers of success there was being the #1 profit center, making the most money, having the best margins. And we were actually called into a room every month and we were ranked by how well we did. And so as a competitive person, that was a driving force for me. And what I didn't realize, that I was driving my poor employees crazy to the point where they were so stressed out because everything was about the bottom line and pushing and pushing. And one of my employees came to me and said, you make me want to quit because I love this place, but everything is about this. And I never had a mentor to tell me this is not a good way of leading. And I'm fortunate to have employees at that time as a young leader who kind of sat me down and showed me that just to be myself, they are going to be more motivated. And so I did that. And I realized over time that to truly be an effective leader, it goes beyond achieving just the outcomes and it involves building really strong relationships and understanding the strengths and the challenges of each of my teammates. And it was super important for me to create an environment where everyone feels valued and supported. And so I learned that by actively listening to my people and empathizing with others' perspectives and showing genuine care, and genuine care is the key to that. I was going to profoundly impact the team's morale, their engagement, productivity, which in essence also creates better margins and better profitability. So that lesson basically taught me that it's not just about guiding others to a common goal, but also about recognizing and addressing the human aspect of the work, and leading with empathy enhances your team dynamics and strengthens those relationships. So that was my lesson learned. And fun fact. Okay, so last summer was my summer of saying yes. So I tried my normal inclination when people ask me, like, do you want to go here or go there? I usually say, no. So I actually, it was my year of yes. And so I was asked to be in a band. So I accidentally joined a band this past summer. Outside of my comfort level, I don't like singing in front of others. I don't like playing the guitar in front of others, but I did it. And I think I didn't die. So I'm going to take that as a success. And it kind of helped me get outside of my normal comfort zone. That's what I got.
Good for you, David. You're next.
Okay, well, 40 years of wealth management experience. So everything from analyst right out of school and finished my career at the CEO level and a lot of different positions in between. Head of training and development for two Wall Street firms, national sales director for Wells Fargo, actually ran the Beverly Hills complex and the West Side for private bank in a number of other positions. So really just a lot of opportunities to learn about leadership along the way and take on different types of challenges. The leadership lesson, along with that, I would say for me, lifelong learning. And that one kind of comes across like, okay, that's not that unique. We all hear about that, right? Everybody has to learn. But the part that's missing from that, that most people don't really speak about, is unlearning. And if you thought what the world we live in today with adaptability and change and how quickly things are moving, it's pretty easy sometimes to get stuck in our own success pattern where we've kind of hit the workforce and we're going through our first roles and things are working. And so we don't really want to change or adapt that much. And we get confident with the way we process things and make decisions. And we can get into a leadership rut and a style rut and a success bias. So I think one of the challenges as we all face the future is, we're going to constantly reinvent ourselves every 3 to 5 years and maybe even faster, honestly, which may be discouraging because you just got out of school and you're like, I don't want to learn it. I don't want to learn anymore. It was a lot. But the reality is, to be able to adjust and move forward, sometimes you have to unlearn those things that have built up and that you become a little bit too comfortable for. So I think that's an important lesson to keep in mind as you move forward, and to, I guess, kind of show it's kind of one of those. Well, I hear you talking about that, but tell me about how you did it. I actually finished a master's in 2022 in leadership and executive coaching. So very late in my career, continued to push, continued to learn, continued to adapt, and it's going to be critical. So that would be one that I think I would put out there. Fun fact: I'm extremely high energy and outgoing, from skydiving to snowboarding to running and doing all kinds of things. But I think one fun fact is uh, scuba diving once in Costa Rica. We were 100 feet under the water and we had been looking for sharks for years. And we got to 100 feet. We're not in cages. and a bunch of sharks swam up. So I've actually been, at the bottom of the ocean with sharks swimming all around me, and here I am. So very, very adventurous from that standpoint.
Thank you, David. Greg.
All right. Hey, everybody. It's great to be with you. So I have a background in education in different roles, from starting, as a research assistant, working my way up to senior executive and having my own businesses. I was a senior executive at a startup online education company that became a scale up, became the market leader. And in 4 years, we went from 6 of us to hundreds of employees and $65 million in sales, on our way to an IPO. And now it's a $1 billion company. And one of the great things about working for that was it was like drinking out of a fire hose of leadership lessons, including what not to do, and almost running out of cash twice, but also, eking by and on the way to market leadership. Um, Worked at a think tank, startup education reform foundation. I'm also an author. I have my own business now. My new book is on the common traps of living that inhibit our happiness and our quality of life. And I've never spoken to anybody who isn't currently in one of the common traps. We're all human, and so we all struggle with things. We have our ups and downs. So I'm very excited about that. I run an online course called Crafting Your Life and Work. I wrote a book about being the entrepreneur of your life. And I'm very passionate about social impact and using business and other sectors to address social issues and challenges, and even the conscious capitalism movement. I wrote a leadership book with my father focused on excellent, ethical, and enduring leadership. And I do teaching as well. That's kind of a bit about me. I'm married. My wife and I, we have 2 teenage daughters. And we lived in Sweden for 10 years. So I'm back here in Colorado for a second time. I also lived in London for a year. So that's been good. In terms of a leadership lesson, I would say definitely the importance of leading yourself first. I think a lot of people skip over that, or we lose sight of that as we get busy with the things that we're doing. And to me, my career, as I think about it, is about leading self, leading others, and leading change. But I'm most passionate about the first because I think that's where we get into trouble, into some of those traps and derailers. And so for me, for example, I learned that the hard way in that scale up where I was so committed to our social mission and to my responsibility to my teammates and our customers, that my health was suffering, my relationships were suffering, and I was traveling so much, and you can get in kind of the habit of living that way, and in ways that are harmful to the broader picture of your life. So at one point, after a couple things, I decided it was time to jump off that train and to take my life back and live the way that I wanted, but also have the impact that I wanted. And that was very, very powerful. But it took me too long to get to that place. So, but the importance of leading self. Let's see. Fun fact, Allison, I was in several bands, but I'm not currently in a band. But I guess the one, and I haven't done anything with sharks, but I will say I tried to learn surfing a couple times. So I did my own self thing in Hawaii once. It was a disaster just for like an afternoon. I found myself in Escondido in Mexico, and I was like, I want to learn to surf. And I saw this guy out where I was, and he was just shredding. He was amazing. And so eventually I worked up the courage. I just kind of went over to him. I said, "Hey, do you ever give surf lessons, or do you know of anybody around?" And he said, "Oh, well, I could help you." And so he ended up giving me surf lessons for like an hour. It was the most sore I've ever been in my life because of the different muscles. But it turns out that Oscar was an international surfing champion. So I happened upon the right guy, and he was amazing, super nice guy. And I did okay for my almost first time. So that was super fun experience. And just ask the people around you, maybe they can help you.
Awesome. All right, Pete.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to be here with all of you. Appreciate learning from the other folks that just spoke about different things. I'm taking notes, so it's great to hear different people's perspective on leadership. I love the topic of leadership. I think it's so applicable to everything in life, and I have a personal perspective that the thing that's most lacking in the world today is actually what I think of as really great leadership. I think we're lacking in leadership in every part of our society. So I think we're here talking about something that matters a great deal. I've got two things about leadership that I would share. One is that I think if you really come from a place of caring about people, not necessarily having to be that that you are really loving all the people in terms of, vibing with them, but really just caring about other human beings. And if you lead from that place, that you can really help people be better, even if they don't think you're helping them be better sometimes. So if you have that belief and you don't stray from that belief of, caring about people and helping them be better, you can really be effective as a leader because you don't get swayed by people convincing you that you are doing things for the wrong reasons if you're really solid on why you're leading individuals. And then something that has been difficult for me. I wanted to pick something that as a leader I feel like it took me a long time to figure it out, and I still think it's I'm a work in progress. I've always been really good at listening, and I think I'm a very intentional listener. And I've never gotten credit for it. And I used to think that way, the statement that I just made. I'm like, how come people don't give me credit for being a really good listener? Well, I had it all wrong. I wasn't listening the right way. I wasn't sending people the signals that they have been heard, asking them really good questions about what they're wanting to talk about, playing back what I heard them say, just as examples of ways to help people understand that I'm listening. So it's an ongoing thing for me, but it isn't, I guess the lesson for me in it isn't about whether or not I'm right, that I'm a really good listener. It's about whether or not the people that I'm interacting with think that I'm a good listener and they believe genuinely that I'm hearing them and that I'm going to do something about the conversation. So I think that's important from a leadership standpoint, really, really important. Fun fact, my daughter Marley is named after Bob Marley, who is one of my heroes in life, and sort of an unusual name for a 25-year-old law school student, but that's my fun fact.
Thank you. Thank you guys for sharing. I loved all learning more about you. I will never go surfing or swimming with sharks or singing in a band or most of the things that you guys have done, but it's really exciting that you guys have done those things. All right, so we're going to move into our panel portion of the evening. So our focus for the panel is contemporary leadership and trends leading diverse groups in the digital age. So each of our advisors have picked a topic that they are focusing their questions and answers on and the breakout groups. But I'll be, pulling on the other advisors during this as well. So I'm going to start with Allison. So Allison chose to focus on leadership in a remote work environment. I'm sure we can all relate to that today. So Allison, you have 25 plus years of experience. What are some challenges and opportunities of leading remote teams that you've learned through your experience?
Right. So I would say the first 20 some years was all basically in person. And if I managed teams in other states, I flew to them or used regular phones, and then COVID hit, right? And it really helped us kind of get out of that comfort zone and figure out how this works. And I think some of the challenges are if you're working with remote people that you have never had that in-person relationship with, there's oftentimes a lot of communication barriers. And even when you use systems like Zoom or Teams or whatever, you could have video conferencing, without that true face-to-face interaction, communication can be really a lot less clear, and it leads to a lot of misunderstandings and misalignment of how people are. Like, they're looking at your face and you're saying one thing and they're reading something else. I think it's also harder to build trust when you only have this remote element, because again, distance can hinder that development of a personal relationship and trust. And it's as you all know, building trust is one of the hardest things, even when you are face to face. And so it just adds that extra dynamic. And I would say the other challenge that I've seen is it's hard to maintain motivation of your teammates when it's hard to really understand, are they engaged or motivated? And it's hard also to kind of gauge their energy levels, and it's hard to provide really effective communication or feedback when you're not really sure, is this what a person looks like remotely, engaged or not? But I think that there's also a lot of opportunities, and as we see, there's a lot more flexibility and work-life balance potentially. You know, morning people, maybe they're working different hours, and they're working mornings where they're more efficient, and work-life balance. I have an employee who every lunch hour she goes and runs with her dog for a half an hour, and she comes back and she is so engaged when she comes back, because she just feels so good about taking that time off, which if you're in an office you don't really get to do, I think. I also think one of the advantages is the access to talent. In the past, you had only people that worked in your geographical location, and sometimes you work in somewhat of a remote area. It's really hard to find employees, and now you can I have employees all over the world, and I would never have had the opportunity to work with such dynamic, just different people from different geographic areas without that constraint. So I think that's really excellent. And the technology tools also, now we use things like Zoom and on the regular, and other technology tools that really make our jobs better. So there's challenges, but I think that there's also some really great opportunities.
Thanks, Allison. David, I know you've worked with a variety of teams in hybrid environments as well. I was wondering if you had anything to add to Allison's points. Oh, you're muted.
I actually started my last role 3 months before COVID started as a new CEO in the middle of M&A, where the bank that I went to work for had just acquired 3 or 4 different companies and businesses, and it all had to be merged. So, in the middle of a storm, one of the first things that I realized and communicated to the leadership group is, we may have been good leaders before COVID. We don't know that we're good leaders now. So in some ways, it's very situational, and we really had to determine who we are, where we were, everything that was a challenge in terms of what we were going to take on, to have to be kind of reacting to this new world, going into this remote type situation. And so it caused us to do a lot of self-reflection, which I think is important, during those times, not just to assume that everything that has worked, again, a little bit like what I talked to before about unlearning, because you just tend to jump in, or you're reacting, or you're pulled in very quickly, and sometimes you just start. And that's not always the best way to have success. It's okay to spend a lot of time really, I think, checking in, seeing where people are, very early on in that time period in particular, to understand everybody is starting at a different place. And again, sometimes we assume everybody is ready to go and everybody is at the same place, and they're eager to do the things we think we want to do and accomplish. And you can leave a lot of people behind if you're not careful. So it's not only awareness of where we might be, and kind of laying out the roadmap, if you will, but it's really checking in and understanding, are we prepared as an organization for the environment that we're in, instead of just really hurrying your way into it, because that can create issues where you have to back up and start over. So for me, from personal experience, in a very kind of new role in a complicated situation, I would say always really make sure that you check in and you really know where people are.
Great, thank you. So Allison, you mentioned that one of your passions is building high achieving teams. So what are some strategies that you use with these teams to be productive in a virtual or mixed setting?
So I think it's really important to understand where your employees are, their strengths and their weaknesses, and both can be really important in building teams. I personally, in addition to talking of my successes, I tend to focus on my missteps, or I don't love to call them failures. At my company, we call them developmental needs. So I like to build a team that has that safe feeling together, so they can truly be the authentic selves that they are, and talk of their strengths and their weaknesses. And I kind of look at building these dynamic teams as kind of building a tapestry, and all different colors and shapes and sizes and all these different things. We all come from different places, different education, different backgrounds, and kind of acknowledging that and actually celebrating it, as hokey as that sounds, I think truly gets you to that place where you can build the best and dynamic teams.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you one more question before we move on to the next topic. Just 'cause I think it's important. So you also said that you lead with empathy. What's another tool you use to build trust and, positivity in a mixed work environment?
So my employees all like to tease me that I'm a very glass half full girl. And some of them are like, your glass is even more than half full, because I think it was the way I was raised. We grew up with nothing, and so my dad was always trying to find the positive side of things. And so I to this day, when I lead my, I embrace the fact when my employee comes into my office or talks to me about some of their failings, and they're upset about it, and I'm like, well, what did you learn though from it, and what can we teach others so they don't have that same misstep? And so I like to find the positive of anything, because if somebody could not feel horrible about their misstep, but look at it as, this is a learning place for me, and I can help others not have that same horrible feeling of that misstep, then that misstep is actually a positive thing, and we can all benefit from it. So I would have to say that.
Thank you. And that's a perfect transition, because we're going to move over to Pete right now, talking about crisis leadership. Pete loves to have a positive work environment at Greenhouse, and I'm sure his other companies prior. So I'll probably call on Allison and Gregg to maybe chime in on a couple of these questions also. So Pete, around crisis leadership, so like I said, you have founded multiple companies. What effective leadership strategies have you leaned on during a time of crisis or uncertainty?
So strategies, let's see, I think a couple different things. I think that the starting place for me would be this concept of displaying, genuine confidence that's grounded in reality. So, if there's a crisis, if there's a difficulty that's extreme, the word crisis is not an everyday sort of roadblock or hurdle sort of a thing. I think leadership needs to really, regardless of what's happening in your brain, you have to display confidence that's grounded in reality. So confidence doesn't mean everything's great, don't worry, ignoring sort of the reality that everybody's living. But you have to be able to help people understand that there's a solution, that there's a path forward, that there are ideas, that there's action that can be taken. And so the way that you message that and the way that you're sort of attitudinally bring that I think is the concept for me is grounded in confidence. The next thing is just that I would say it is from a strategy standpoint, it's more of like what I view as, sort of how to lead a successful life. And I think it certainly applies to leadership, and leadership is certainly more than about work. I've got lots of crises that I could share that have to do with things that, are not just things that have occurred at work. But this idea that attitude is everything. And I do believe so strongly that there's very little that we can control in the world and in our lives, but our attitude is for sure one of those things. And so the attitudes that I think matter in a crisis are positivity and belief. And so positivity is, again, not a form of positivity that ignores a situation, but this exuding of we're going to focus on solutions, we're going to support each other, we're in it together, and just belief. I mean, you have to believe. And the thing that's hard about belief for people in a crisis is the evidence says otherwise until you're able to change the dynamic and work your way through the crisis. And so belief sometimes has to happen without proof or evidence, especially when there's a crisis. And then the last two things I'd bring up are decisiveness and communication, and they don't necessarily go together, but they can work together. So decisiveness is, Colin Powell said something one time about how if you gather 100% of the information, you've missed the opportunity. If you make decisions without enough information, you're a fool. And so the decisiveness has to do with where's the right place. I've got enough data in this crisis. I need to act. I need to give people marching orders. I need to collaborate with these people over here to help them with this, or I need to ask these people these questions to help me figure this thing out. And I'm going to decide how to prioritize the time and the energy that I have. And then communication. I mean, I think communication is always important, but when things are going poorly, significantly poorly, people need more communication. One-on-one communication, small group communication, whole group communication, all of it, and a lot of it. And so really being willing to communicate, to sort of open up to people about what's happening, what's going on, keep people in the loop. I think communication is critical. So there's, crisis leadership is so dynamic because it's a moving thing. It's a new thing by definition. It's not a norm. And so I feel like there are different things. That's why I covered some different things that apply to handling a situation that's that dynamic.
Thanks, Pete. Allison, I saw your head nodding a lot. I wanted to see if you had anything else to add to that.
I think Pete is 100% right. I think the only things I would add is I think it's really important to stay calm, or appear to be calm, and like channel your inner calmness during it. It's very hard to operate when you are feeling the crisis that's, overwhelming sometimes. So stay calm and positive. I also always engage somewhat of a humor element. It works for me to kind of keep myself grounded and recognize we're not putting out a bomb here. We have a crisis, and we together as a team need to work together and get everything under control. I personally like to engage others and brainstorm with them, have people take ownership also of it. I think when people feel like they have a say, or they have some input on some solutions, it helps them calm down and act a little bit more responsibly and less, crazy. No, that's probably the wrong word. I like that team mentality and building a consensus. And as Pete said, it's super important to communicate effectively. And oftentimes we as leaders think we're communicating, and we're leaving out a whole bunch of people, or we're not communicating enough. So over communication, really, we have a saying in my company, 7 times 7 ways, to really make sure that everybody is truly understanding what we're communicating, leaving it open to ask questions and give their feedback. I think is really important when dealing with crises.
Thank you. Pete, can you give us, one or two maybe firsthand sort of examples of how you led through crisis situations? I know there's been a lot in the last handful of years.
What are you referring to, Jamie?
You
So,
like a
sorry.
pandemic or something.
Right. Well, yeah, actually, there's a good pandemic crisis example. So with Greenhouse Scholars, when the pandemic happened, I was actually in New Zealand and carried on without a lot of connection to some of the unfolding reality, and continued to Thailand and then sort of had a wake-up call that helped me sort of pay more attention. Ended up back here and getting re-engaged in everything after being away for several weeks. And so Greenhouse Scholars is a pretty mature organization, and so we have a pretty good knowledge about our finances and everything. And our forecast for March of the year of the pandemic, from a revenue standpoint and income standpoint, was, I think it was $320,000, and our revenue that month was zero. And so we were in uncharted territory, and we did believe at the time, at the end of March, that we were in immediate jeopardy of going out of business, of our business model not being relevant, in terms of relying on a lot of individual donations and some corporate donations and foundation donations. And so we ended up being wrong in the best possible way. But at the time, it was just a dramatic business situation to have literally no revenue. And, the world was obviously in an unusual situation as well. And so, we moved very quickly to design a very specific plan. And I think it plays to some of the things I was talking about. So I returned from this vacation, which was ill-timed. I had an all-company communication. I met with all the other leaders individually. We really talked through things, displayed some confidence about how we were going to figure things out, and then went about, really developing a plan based on what we thought the real immediate need was. And it was a very clear plan. It had, I can't remember exactly, but I think we had 4 things. This is exactly what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is the timeline. You guys are going to focus on this now. You guys are going to focus on this. We help people understand that some of what they were doing previously wasn't important in the immediate term. And it all culminated in a fundraising event that we created this campaign where we helped people understand the jeopardy that we felt like we were in. And I think anybody that's involved in philanthropy knows this next part, which is that the United States rallied behind the philanthropic causes people cared about like never before. It was unbelievable. It was a record year for donations to philanthropic causes, and we benefited from that. Our loyal folks rallied. And it started with that campaign that we had as an immediate sort of reaction. And just by the way, I just think I'm just proud of the team that put all this together. Part of our plan was to raise money for the folks in our program in a way that was nothing to do with how we were supporting them previously. But we were really essentially saying, hey, we need to survive, but we're also going to raise incremental money for the people we're supporting so that they have what they need. So we actually shifted our model temporarily to support needs that were specific to the pandemic. And I only bring that up because I'm kind of proud of it, because the team really, kind of figured out that we needed to do things really differently because of it. But so that's my main example. I guess you said 1 or 2. So a quicker version. It's kind of a fun story for me. So I was responsible for managing all of the marketing agency business for the Coors Brewing Company. And when I first started my job at this, it was a big Fortune 500 company called Omnicom. It's a big holding company. And when I started my job after 3 weeks, I met my client, the vice president in charge of this one brand. I started working on this smaller brand. And in this very first meeting, he said, Pete, I just want to interrupt you after like literally 30 seconds. I hadn't even really told him who I was. And he said, I just want you to know that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you and your company fail. And I mean, I've just started my job. I've moved my family. My wife is pregnant with our first child. And I said, wow, John, that is really something. Help me understand that. Like, where is this coming from? And he explained his, really warped rationale, and he meant it. And so he went about the process for the next 3 to 6 months of trying to make sure we failed. From an integrity standpoint, there was nothing off the table for him. And so, we stayed the course. I stayed super positive, just rallied everybody. We weren't sugarcoating anything. We were open with everybody about where the client stood. It was super toxic. We focused on communication. We focused on positivity. To Allison's point, we stayed calm. We did our jobs. We worked hard. We created solutions, and that guy he told me a year later that I was the most valuable marketing person he'd ever worked with, and how our company was the most valuable company that he had ever worked with, and it was crazy. But it's kind of a funny story because really, honestly, I laugh every time I think about sitting down. I can picture his office, sitting in the chair, across from his desk, and 30 seconds into my new job, him telling me that he was going to try and make sure I failed. But so the attitude thing was what really mattered in that example.
Thank you, Pete. All right, so we are going to go and move along to the next topic, which I think also is connection to what Pete said of ethical leadership, because that wasn't very ethical what that person did. So Gregg, this is his topic. Gregg, so as far as ethical leadership, you talked about you like to connect personal development and leadership together. I think a lot of that comes from an ethical place when you're talking about personal development. So can you speak a little more to the importance of that ethical decision-making process and transparency?
Yeah, sure. I would say that character is at the heart of leadership. And character being having integrity, and then the courage to act on that integrity over time kind of shows your character. There have been some interesting surveys done of what people are looking for in their managers. And these are global surveys done over decades all over the world. And the number one thing that people are looking for in their managers, lots of things. You want visionaries, you want people who are competent, you want people who are smart, you want people who are, relational, empathetic. The number one thing, honesty, right? And if you don't have a manager who's being honest with you and forthright and transparent, it really harms you, right? It harms your motivation. You feel like you can't trust. Why should I go the extra effort? Are they going to stab me behind the back? So really, really important. And I think a lot of people don't connect the dots. They kind of view business as the game, or organizations as kind of a race to the top. And so I would say ethics is at the heart of it, and transparency is a part of that. And just an example from my own personal experience. So in this startup scale up, we were launching virtual schools all over the country. And my job was to lead a team to go and get these schools approved, and then go staff them up, hire a bunch of people to run them and teach in them, and then to manage those people. And then we had a very back office and a bunch of other business lines and whatnot. And so with each new state, so each online school, and this was 20 years ago, this is way before COVID, and we had Zoom and all this became kind of normal. So this was back then, doing this at scale was kind of new. And so back then, each new statewide online school was a really big deal for the country, but especially for our startup, right? Because it was just a big deal in terms of credibility and revenues. And so we were opening several of these. We got one approved. And then 2 weeks before the school was going to open, the state came in and cut our funding in half. for the school. Now, we had already started enrolling students and families that were kind of desperate for a new education option for their children because their current school, public or private, they weren't happy with. And so we had this kind of choice as a private company, a startup, this kind of cash strapped that really had to grow in order to, and become profitable to serve our investors so that we could do a public offering in the future. What are we going to do about the fact that they sliced our funding in half, not 10%, not, 50%, right before school was going to open. And so we had a debate about it as a senior management team. Think about what would you do in that case? The cash is important. There's all sorts of dynamics here. And we ended up not opening the school. We decided we can't open the school at 50% funding. And there were some risks associated with that. I was on the other side of that. I was strongly saying we went out to these families and they're counting on us, and it's very late, and for them to try to find a new school at the last minute, it's going to be a big one. There's all sorts of dynamics. Would we get sued by the families? All sorts of things. There's all sorts of considerations. The numbers, the finances were bad, but I was arguing strongly that we need to find a way to try to make it work. And I got voted down on the management team. And that's fine. This happens. You don't always win, your case and whatnot. So that was okay. But what was not okay with me is that our decision-making to me was too narrow. And it was just like, the numbers don't work. Boom, we're not going to open the school. Wait a minute. Families, students, reputation, no, the numbers don't work. Boom, boom, boom. And so you're thinking about, you got your shareholders, right? And so this was the right decision in the short term for the shareholders. But in terms of some of the other stakeholders, including some of our employees who are so committed to serving these families and whatnot, there were some other nuances that we really needed to talk through more deeply. And I felt like in terms of the ethical decision-making process, we did a good and robust one. And I think that's very common in companies, right? They're very narrow. You're not used to talking about ethical dilemmas and looking at it from different angles and from different stakeholder perspectives, right? And so I think that was a real lesson for me, that we need to do much better in terms of ethical leadership and decision making. And for me personally, it was the first sign of, is this a fit for me in terms of my own values with this organization? If we're not going to take these other considerations into account robustly. So a lot of really rich lessons there, but a tough period.
Thank you. So I think so far everyone sort of talked about some ups and downs with leadership. Do you have another example talking about, maybe successes or failures around that give and take of leadership? And David, I'd like to hear from you as well after Gregg.
Do you want me, Jamie? It just wasn't clear. You want me to go and then David?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So maybe I'll give another one from. So I've been a lifelong athlete, and I played soccer growing up, and I had the opportunity to be co-captain of my college soccer team. And as part of the playing varsity in our Division III college, this was out in California. You had to pass a juggling test, juggle the ball 200 times. You had to pass a fitness test. It's called the Cooper test. So run 2 miles in 12 minutes, just as a basic kind of threshold for being on the team. And so, some players had no trouble with this, and other players struggle with it. And it was kind of our goalkeeper failed. Our starting goalkeeper failed both of our goalkeepers, the starting and the second string goalkeeper, failed the Cooper test. And so we had this kind of, all right, well, then you can run it again. And the captains are going to run it instead of the coach around the track. And we had kind of you could go around the campus, and we had to kind of measure it out. And so the captains would go 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, and we'd run it for the people who didn't pass the Cooper test. And so I sent off the people, and I thought I'd just hop in my car and drive halfway to just kind of cheer them on and say, come on, you guys can do it. Let's go. And when I got there, I just happened upon the starting goalkeeper was cheating and he was cutting across the quad. And he didn't see me that I saw him do it. And so I drove to the finish line to welcome everybody. And, and so I asked him after the race, he came in just in time. And I said, is there anything you want to tell me about what just happened? No. What are you talking about? I'm just tired. I'm glad I did it. No. Is there anything you want to tell me about what just happened? I'm trying to give him an opportunity to kind of come forward. Uh, and and so he didn't admit anything. He's basically trying to get away with it. I knew he had cheated, and I think what I ended up doing was um, basically disclosing to him that I knew what had happened and that there were two outcomes. One was that I was going to tell the coach about it, and there's probably going to be a big problem. Our coach was very strict and big into fitness, and he was a Presbyterian minister. And the other thing was that he would go talk to the coach about it and have a conversation. And we go there, we try to move forward, decide what to do about it. And he ended up deciding to talk to the coach himself, which I thought was probably the smart thing, the wise thing to do. He talked to the coach. He ended up getting penalized, missing some games and whatnot. But it kind of brought out this issue of like, what is the purpose of college and education? What's the purpose of sports? And is it only about winning? And is it the fact that we need our starting goalkeeper? And so he needs to be in there regardless of whether he cheats or not. And by the way, there's a whole issue of like, should goalkeepers even have to do a fitness test like this? Because they're not running around like all the, no, they have to be in shape, but maybe so there's kind of a debate about that. And so there's this kind of narrow way to look at it. Kind of, this is BS. This doesn't make any sense. But on the larger picture, what's it all about? Is it all about just winning? Is it all about just having the best people on the field? Or is there some kind of challenge to our character? And who are we as a team? And what does it say about us if some people cheat and we don't do anything about it? And our character? And what are the life lessons? And my word, as I look back on it, I hope that that person had some lessons that he took away as a human being that would give him pause, because we're all tempted to cheat. We're all tempted to do things that are, that something comes up and one, that's just the nature of the world. But what's the larger picture here? And so kind of looking back on that, I view that as a success. I thought we handled it fairly well. And there's kind of there's a larger picture here going on, as well as the issue at hand. I think you need to operate at both levels.
Yeah, I think this is an important topic. I mean, it's really, we're all going to be faced with it. We may not want to be faced with it, but the chances are during our career, we're going to be in one of those potentially compromising situations. The way I like to think about it, it's integrity, it's character, it's ethics, but you can't be 99.9% ethical. You just can't be. You're either ethical 100% or you're not. And that probably, and I think it applies with your character, your values. So there's some challenges, in any career around what do you stand for? What are you going to stand up for? What do you believe in? How are you going to really make those decisions as you're faced with those? And each one of those decisions really builds and reinforces the person that you are, that you want to be. And that's real. It happens. I have an example. It was literally, a big example. Some of you may not know the situation, but Wells Fargo as a company, shortly after the financial crisis, they were like most corporations, they have goals to hit, revenue to drive, so their sales contest or whatever they're trying to do to hit their numbers for, Wall Street, let's say, whatever the excuses are around, the behavior. And these sales contests to hit these numbers started at a very small local level. And then it got a little bigger between two different locations. In this case, it was in California, competing locations. And before you know it, some of the sales that were going on, weren't really happening, and people were reporting them as if they were happening. And it turned out all over the country. So, small things can turn into very big things. And that company today, 10 years later, 15 years later, is still trying to recover, from the brand destruction that it did, certainly the cost from the regulators and things like that. So, when you're in the middle of those types of situations, where are you going to stand? Are you going to, follow the crowd, let's say, in this case, and compete and do the things that they were doing unethically to drive sales, or are you going to step away from that? And sometimes you have to leave the company. I've left more than one company during my career in Wall Street because of the way things were done, and that's hard because you've got a family. It depends on where you are, your commitments, and those types of things. But you're faced with those dilemmas, which is probably not the right way to say it because it shouldn't be a dilemma. And It's stressful. It puts you through a lot knowing that you're going to have to deal with that. So, whether it's at a personal level, sports level or company level, just know you're who you are as an individual. I think throughout your career, and with leaders that you're observing are challenged with these things many more times than you think they are.
Thanks, David. So I think that's a good segue on your topic of resilient leadership. So you talked about the importance of unlearning, which I think in unethical situations, that's what we hope to do. What are some other strategies for overcoming setbacks and learning from failures?
Yeah, I mean, I think about, again, as we build our resilience, which we have to do, over time, it's a little bit like a muscle, but I kind of shift toward adaptability because I think we're reacting. And to me, adaptability is built off of several different things. If you think grit as an example, how are you going to stick with things, when things get really hard toward that actual is a component of adaptability. Mental flexibility, our ability to kind of flex between how we think, are we visionary or detail, our growth mindset, unlearning and resilience. Those components build up our adaptability. So uh, I think that for me always comes to mind when I think about the being resilient. You're building your ability, I think, over time, and resilience. Let's call that bouncing back, or as some people like to say, bouncing forward. In a positive way, where you're capable of those challenging situations or those stressful situations. But it takes, I think, a lot of things, and that's why I named some of the other factors that I think relate to our ability to kind of adapt in different types of situations. It's not just resilience; it's some other things that we have to build over time. Pete mentioned earlier hope. I think hope part of adapting, because hope really, if you think about it, you believe you're going to be able to be successful. You believe there's a pathway forward. You just have this strong belief that things can be different than they are. So all of that composition begins to build who we are with our ability to adapt, which is like a muscle. You're going to be in a situation where you need to have that grit and stick with it longer than you thought, or you might have to flex your approach with mentally the way you think about things. And so, in those environments, it's important to realize that each individual, again, starts at a different place. Some people are very capable of adapting. Other people hold back, and they've never maybe been in the situations that require them to kind of deal with maybe the change, the rapid change, or the M&A, or whatever the situation might be that's causing the environment to change. And we all are very much a product of our environments, and a lot of this is around where we are. Is, do we have support inside the company? Do we have emotional support? Is there team support? Is that environment there for us when we're faced with some of those things that we have to kind of flex in? Is it safe, to try new things and fail and learn from those types of things? Or do you get in trouble for that? So all of that over time is going to shape someone's ability to, again, be resilient and adapt as the company or you or your teams are going through those types of things. But it comes back to really as a company caring about the employees and investing in their development, maybe opening them up to these types of things and awareness from an educational standpoint. Communication is always a factor. It's kind of core to almost everything. You want to have, clarity around maybe where the company is going, the vision of the company, the mission of the company. Is that deviating? Has it shifted? So that consistency of the mission and the purpose, is important because it's a stable force if the environment, is being pushed in a different direction. Strong relationships. You need to have people that you can speak with. Not just your peer and your team, but other people in the organization. So know who those people are. Who you can trust. Is it a mentor? Is it a peer? Is it someone else? And so resiliency is interesting to me because some companies are good at it, some aren't at all. That's why they're not here anymore. They didn't learn to adapt as an organization, and that usually meant because at a basic level, they weren't prepared from the people, from the staff, from how they ask the questions with what's going on. So resilience is an interesting topic. It's one I'm very interested in. I happen to be a certified adaptability coach, so it's a very important topic to me. And so think about this in my mind from the standpoint of adaptive leadership. We hear about different styles of leadership. If you're transformational or if you're, more, of a dictator and you demand certain things, or but being adaptable as a leader, being situational, is going to help you when you're facing these things.
Thanks, David. So we just really have like a minute left of this segment, but I just wanted to maybe see if you could touch on, you and Allison both talked about teams a lot. How do you build resilient teams? How do you ensure that you're hiring or putting the right people in the right places to have the characteristics you talked about?
I think you check in, right? I mean, during the hiring process is one thing because there's the interview and screening and things like that. But you ask people. I think you learn from the situations that they've been in, and you ask them to describe maybe some of their background, maybe some of the situations, the challenges that they've faced, and how they've handled those, and the way they've mentally adapted to dealing with those situations, and how they've come through those situations. And each one of those, whether it's personal or it's corporate. But I think the main thing is always to start with yourself. You need to give yourself a break during stressful situations. You need to give yourself kind of that, if you want to call it the mindfulness, the ability to step away from whether it's chaotic change or it's kind of predictable change. And oftentimes we get so caught up in the demands, I think, of the work environment, which we talked about, that we just get into this, call it workaholic, or just constant work environment without really not waiting for someone to check in on you. You've got to check in on yourself. You have to know yourself well enough to say, I need to take time for myself. I need a little bit of a recovery period. So I think to be resilient, there's got to be some balance with recovery, either recovery that you see, or hopefully someone else cares enough about and is aware of the environment to provide that environment for recovery to happen. That helps resiliency.
David, you answered so darn great. You took all my thoughts and you threw it all out there. So thank you very much, David. Such a complete answer. I mean, when I'm building that team, it does start at the interview process. I like to know who a person really is. I don't really care about their education and their grades and the stuff that they were necessarily successful at, because I feel like as a leader, I can help my staff be the best that they can be. I'd like to hear about some of their failures and how they dealt with it. And to me, it's a true display of, is this person a person I would want on my team? And my dad used to have this saying that anybody can be wonderful and display great character and great whatever when things are great, but who are they? A true test of a person's character or resilience or fill in the blank on that is who they are when things are not going well and how they overcame that issue. And so I personally love to kind of delve into that when I'm interviewing people and see like how resourceful are they, and are they all about, well, I did this and I did that and I did that, or is it, well, I leaned on this coworker, or I had this great leader in my group, or I didn't know what to do because I didn't have those resources. Um, I think that is very telling. I will hire somebody who wants to be a dynamic part of a team well before I'm going to hire somebody who might be the smartest person in the room and wants to go at it on their own, because the person who wants to be on a team and is going to grow from other people's strengths and missteps, that's the person I want in my room when there's a crisis, because that is the person who truly, I think, is going to be resilient and gritty and all those things that David said.
Awesome. Thank you, advisors. We're going to slowly pivot to some really brief and quick alumni introductions. So alums, you're going to come off of mute in just a second and share with our advisors your name, your title, and literally under 30 seconds, y'all, what is a leadership lesson that you've learned or a challenge that you're facing currently with leadership? I'm going to give us like 15 seconds to process and think about that before I start cold calling people, but please be ready.
And everybody sing a song too.
No.
Plenty of time. It'll be quick.
No.
No. Oh.
And if you can't come off of mute, please just DM me. Otherwise, I won't know. Jess, you look particularly ready. If you could let us know who you are, title, and answer that question.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess. I'm calling from San Francisco. I'm a senior product marketing manager at a technology startup called Cypress IO. And leadership lesson is a little tricky. I think right now one of my biggest challenges might be just with getting, we're a resource-strapped company. There are lots of different things that we can spend our energy on, and I think just prioritization, maintaining prioritization with like all of the things that are going on is really challenging. And I think just there's a lot of organization that my team does to try to keep things straight, which has been really helpful for new folks that are coming on the team. So it's probably just trying to think like systematically is the main leadership lesson that I've learned over the last couple of years.
Awesome. Thank you. Annika, you look really ready too.
Well, I'm happy I look it. So hi, my name is Annika. I am an offering manager at IBM, focus on in consulting, so consulting offering within IBM. And I think the leadership lesson that I've been learning and continually build on is, I guess, how to navigate difficult like financial situations. I think that just IBM may be big, but in some cases you are really resource strapped, or at least have the illusion of being resource strapped for whatever reason, and just how to get the right people in your courts to navigate that, whether it's individuals on your team taking a look at resources and how we can better align resources from that perspective, or to even just share the burden in a productive way.
Thanks, Annika. Walker, you're next on my screen.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Walker. I'm currently a BIM and quality control engineer for Gilmore, and also my own business. I do building design. And to the question, I got brought on to Gilmore to pretty much start a department. So I guess the current leadership is there's no procedure set in this company. So BIM is building information modeling, and it's been around for around 15 years plus. But a lot of companies haven't implemented it. So it's pretty much gathering 3D models for buildings, structures, and combining all the models from architects and different engineers. And I pretty much have to go in and look for problems before they happen in the field. So it's a way for, I guess, contractors and owners to save money and time. So I mean, I'm learning a lot. So I'm in the process of setting procedures for the company. And yeah, I mean, I'm the only one in the company that does BIM. So I have to teach up BIM is. I even have trouble explaining what I do as a job to people when I first meet them. So yeah, I guess just learning how to get this department to a good place, so it can keep on going for years and years to come. So
Okay, shout out to you again for the new job. Hey.
yeah, thank you.
Makta, you're next on my screen. Can you come off of mute?
Yeah, sorry, I'm on my cell too. So my name is Makata. I have spent the past few years in tech banking, and now I'm looking to transition into VC. Some things that I've learned regarding leadership throughout my career is kind of I think someone earlier said there is like a huge leadership crisis, and I really think that is true. One thing that I think that I've had to navigate and has been interesting to see other people navigate is kind of just dealing with a lot of different personalities, and when trying to get people excited to do work, especially when there's a ton of competing priorities or deadlines, and things like that. So that's something that I've just have dealt with in the past, and have seen how it's worked out with different people's approaches.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, you're next on my screen.
Hi, my name is Yassi. I am currently a data analyst for the city of Los Angeles, and a budding entrepreneur and podcast host. Recently, I have been struggling with unlearning a lot of internalized ableism. Just being a neurodivergent person, I realized that I've been trying to approach entrepreneurship and leadership in general, and through a very neurotypical lens. And I'm like, oh, my brain just doesn't work that way. So trying to understand trying to understand my strengths as a neurodivergent person. And it's not that I'm not capable, it's just that these are areas that I struggle with. So how can I build systems or ask for help in those areas and play to my strengths? So I think that's a lot of unlearning is happening right now, and redirection, and trying to figure out the best places to outsource my energy.
Yessie, what does neurodivergent mean?
Neurodivergence is people, some examples of people who are neurodivergent, people who have ADHD, autism, dyslexia. I have all of those. And yeah, so those are just some of the things that I'm learning about myself consistently.
Yeah, thanks.
And I hope to see you this Friday. Pray that I don't get snowed in. Moving on to Alexa.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alexa. I am working for Children's Health Andrews Institute, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I have my own business. But for Children's Health, I am their program manager for their sports science division. And there's a lot of growth happening. We're having a little bit of transition with leadership. I've kind of taken a step up and become a more vocal leader in the department, but that also means that I'm leading people who are older than me. And I've always been the type of leader who will lead by example. And I think that that's come across most recently as, having a slight inability to like delegate and delegate well and hold people accountable. Because I've tried to tell people what to do, and maybe it's kind of my communication style that maybe could kind of tighten up a little bit. But that's the most kind of like pressing leadership issue now, is because I'm so focused on the things that I'm pushing forward and working on, that I've gotten kind of a critique recently that, my delegation skills need to improve a little bit and holding people accountable. So yeah, nice to be here.
Thanks, Alexa. Wang, it is 1 a.m. where you are. Are you able to come off of mute?
Yes, but I won't show my sleepy head on
We get
camera.
it.
Well, thanks the greenhouse team and Gregg, David, and Allison for supporting our program and for taking the time to chat. I am currently a PhD student in Oxford, but I did my undergraduate at Duke in the US, so that's where I got Greenhouse Scholarship support for the program. I guess a lesson in the leadership area for me is really practice giving people, the benefit of the doubt and trust that, enough so that we intentionally listen to what they have to say before responding. And I think that's quite difficult, especially with people we don't know or people who are in a higher up, in a power dynamics than you might be. But it's so important skill that I think is crucial for me and everyone to appreciate. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining in, Wang. And saving the best for last. Lamar, go ahead.
Wow, that's a great introduction. Thanks. Hey, everybody. I'm Lamar. I'm currently an associate in Modern Executive Solutions, doing executive search and talent advisory. Challenge that I'm thinking about right now, I think just trying to lead from a natural position of less power is just kind of difficult. I'm currently an associate and I am pitching for a role that is kind of a director role, but in a function that necessarily doesn't exist in the company right now. And I just find myself getting into like so many situations where I'm trying to express an idea or pitch or work on a deck or blah 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 or whatever. And because I am an associate and all these people are like much higher than me that I have to be bringing this to, because there's no established function for it for me to like kind of more naturally think of, okay, who can I talk to in this order? Kind of got to go to the top. I just find myself getting just like bombarded with like a bunch of ideas and a bunch of you should add this and you should add that and blah blah this and blah blah that. And it's just like, okay, yeah, I get you. But this is the idea. And if all of you are giving your input on it constantly, it's never going to get anywhere. But that's really hard to kind of like take up that space and have that presence when you don't have that kind of power in your role. So yeah, that's what I've been struggling with, is just trying to lead from the lower ground in a way.
Thank you, alumni advisors. I hope this painted like a really quick but somewhat good picture of who is in the room. Before we move into our breakout groups, I do want to take a picture so that I don't forget at the end. So if you're in a place where you can turn your camera on, please do. Wang, your photo looks great on here, to be honest, so don't even worry about it. Like, you look like you're here. Let me just get my screen ready. We'll take 2 pictures. One is cute and professional, and the second one will be fun. So right now we're doing cute and professional. Smile for the Instagram page. Cheese. Love. Okay, this next one is funky, weird, fun. Grab your plants, your pets, your Stanley cups, whatever is around you. I'll give folks a second. Prepare a funny face. Okay, counting us down in 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Love it. We have our executive advisors in residence session coming up on June 18th, so be on the lookout for that invitation. Our whole person advisor session on September 10th, and then our all advisor session on December 3rd. For those of you in this room, really everyone except for Wang, sorry, you're phasing out, you're getting old like me, but everyone else in this room, you are eligible to attend Ignite. If you haven't already signed up with me, please make plans, move things around your calendar. Ignite is taking place August 2nd through 4th. Let me know if you're coming, if you haven't already. Yessie asked a great question in one of our breakout groups around sharing resources from the advisors, which we will be sharing a bunch of resources with everyone on this call, likely tomorrow morning when I email everyone. It's a long list. So Jessie, I think, is also putting them in the chat, but just in case you're not able to like copy and paste all of it right now, since we're at time, I'll be resending those out tomorrow morning, along with all of the advisors' emails in case you're interested in following up with them and just having some one-off conversations. Last but not least, please, please, please take the alumni survey. So many pleases I just put in there, hoping that each please was like more pleasing. It is really important to us to capture your feedback so that we know how these sessions are going and can include things in future sessions that are good ideas that you have. So please fill those out. When you have a moment, I'll remind you of this again tomorrow as well. The sooner the better, as things are still fresh in your memory. And then final plug, that bottom link is our alumni website, which we update frequently with happenings from the Young Leaders Program. So feel free to bookmark that site and check it for things that are coming up next. Thank you all so, so much for joining. So good to see everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.